And with that, we will go ahead and segue into our next talk. And I'm really excited about this because Nick is going to be talking about AudioKit. And I've had the pleasure of meeting the AudioKit team, and they're really awesome to work with, really awesome open source framework for Mac and iOS. So big shout out to the AudioKit team, to RA, Matthew Fetcher, Taylor, and the rest of the team. Hope you're all doing well. And with that, I will pass things over to Nick. He's going to build a sampler synth for us today, and he's going to do it live. So Nick is a musician turned app developer, releasing apps under the name Moby Pixel. He's launching a new app tomorrow using AudioKit, and he's going to share some of the lessons learned in the process of making it. So I will pass it over to you, Nick.
All right. Thank you so much. I got some seasonal allergies, so if I sound extra baritone, that's the reason why. I'm not putting on my radio voice or anything. Prashant, awesome job. That was really interesting stuff. I forgot where I was for a little while, just getting sunk into it. And then Joshua, thank you for having me. I do want to echo exactly what you said. The AudioKit community is awesome. I recently got back into audio development earlier this year, and I didn't know what I was doing at first. I've been releasing apps for around 12 years. I knew what I was doing in terms of app development, but one thing about AudioKit is it's an open source community. So Ari, who's the head of it, he is totally open to pull requests. So if you want to add something to AudioKit, if you want to make it better, then you can do a pull request. That's where I was kind of the noob. Is with GitHub, I didn't really know how to do pull requests. So I remember the first pull request I did, it was just I wrote in text like, can you fix this thing in there? He's like, I don't see the code. So then I put my comment in code brackets. He's like, no, at least you posted it in the chat, but that doesn't quite cut it. Since then, I've done I've gotten several pieces of pull requests that I've put into AudioKit, and specifically I've been paying attention to Apple Sampler. The name Apple Sampler is a little bit of a misnomer because it's actually AudioKit's implementation of AV Audio Unit Sampler. So I am going to make a sampler using it. I'm releasing the app, and I use this. I went up this learning curve. So hopefully you're going to learn everything I learned all synthesized into 30 minutes. And I have this little 30-minute timer that I got. So we'll see if it's done, then I'll be happy. And yeah.
And if it's not, then what do we do?
I die. That's yeah.
No, we don't want that.
My career's over. Yeah. So here we go. The first thing we got to do when you're making a sampler is you have something to sample. So this is a ukulele that my grandfather had, and whenever I used to go to his house, then for Christmas time, then this is what I would always pick up. They had instruments around. I'd always be jamming on them. All right, so first thing we got to do, we got to record sounds. Now they are doing some stuff outside right now. I think they're mowing the lawn. 'Tis the season for mowing the lawn. But I'm going to use a DAW that comes on everyone's iPhone. It's called Voice Memo, and I'm going to record a sound. Okay, so everyone be quiet for a second. And perfect. I only heard my daughter in the background, but that's okay. She's homesick and she's watching Sonic. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this sound. I'm going to airdrop it to my computer. And as I do this stuff, I can tell you more about AudioKit. The cool thing about AudioKit, and in particular, the area that I'm using, is that it's just a very thin layer. So that means that if AudioKit is gone tomorrow, all of my code isn't instantly deprecated, which is what happened in the past whenever I was releasing music apps. I was using an OpenAL sound engine, and it got deprecated at the same time whenever Apple was changing from 32-bit to 64-bit. So I had to update my app. The audio engine was going to have to be updated. And everyone was into audio bus at the time. So I was gonna have to do audio bus. And then I looked at the apps and they weren't making money. So I was like, I'm gonna do game development now. I'm kind of over this for a little bit. So that was about 5 years ago. And now since I recently moved, I decided, okay, I want to get back into audio development. I found the audio programmer. I was looking at Juice, and then finally I saw AudioKit again. Before I thought it was all about synthesizers and making mobile synthesizers. Then as I dug into it, they have something really cool with AudioKit right now called the Cookbook. You can download that from GitHub and install it on your device. And it's really a great taster of what all is you can do with AudioKit. Some of the stuff is already built on top of Apple's code, but Apple's code a lot of times is accessible, but it's not discoverable. And that's what AudioKit does a great job of. So now I'm going to start sharing my screen and we will see the sound that I've sent over. Here we go. Welcome to my screen. And here is the sound that we just brought in, our ukulele. Let's see if we can hear that. Okay, did you hear it?
Yep, all good.
Awesome. All right. Kind of has a weird fade, but you know what? We're going to have a weird fade instrument. We're doing this live. We're doing it live. All right, so I'm going to take that sound. Let's create a new Xcode project. And creating a new Xcode project, that's just like a brand new baby. It's precious. All right, so we're going to call this Yuki app because it's going to be our ukulele. And we're using Swift UI. One of the cool things about AudioKit 5, which is their current iteration, is all their examples are built on top of Swift UI. You could still use Swift, and I'm sure you could use Objective-C or whatever else, but Swift UI, that's where the examples are, so that's where I started working. So whenever you're creating an Apple sampler instrument, there is one thing that Apple is very particular about where the sounds come from. Okay, so what I'm going to do inside of my project is I'm going to bring in a sounds folder. This seems like a trivial step, but it can break your apps. Also, I will say that I have a YouTube channel where I do these tutorials. If I miss anything, some of those go a little more in depth, but this is going to cover some things that aren't in those videos as well. So we have our sounds folder. We can now drag our sound in there. Let's rename our sound. Come here. Let's go ahead and drag that in. Okay, and let's rename our file to Yuki. Now, this file type is an M4A. That only an animal would make a music app with an M4A sound, but it does work. So that's what we're going to try out here. Now, over here, I have Logic, and Logic has an awesome sampler. The sampler inside of Logic is the AV audio unit sampler. So whenever I drag this sound over here, you can see it automatically pops up a menu, and I can do sampler zone per note. So already this has mapped it to a keyboard, and whenever I click the notes, you should be able to hear it. There we go. Maybe we don't like the that little thing at the beginning, so I'm going to drag over our starting point some. Okay, we get rid of a little bit of it, so that sounds a little bit better, but we don't want any popping, so what I'm going to do is they actually have an amplitude envelope right here. I can add a short, sweep going into the sound, and then I can add some release time. So the release will allow anytime I'm playing a note for it to ring out. There we go. We are working on our hit app. One of the cool things about this is they also have a low pass filter in here. You can route all of these different things, multiple LFOs. You can use the pitch right here. So if I do details, I can actually have two voices in unison. But I'll play two voices at once, but I'm also detuning them by 10 cents. So now whenever I play it, it should sound a little thicker. I don't know if that's in stereo in your headphones, but in mine, it sounded super awesome. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say File, Save As. Yuki, but I want to save it inside of this new project that we just created in that sounds folder. So here's my Yuki app. Here's my sounds. There we are. The instrument is just Yuki. Sounds good. All right. So now we're actually done with Logic. We don't need Logic anymore. You can reopen that EXS file in the future if you want to add more things. And certainly you would want to do that. Just have everything routing to different notes on a MIDI keyboard and things like that. But in the app I made, it also has a low pass filter. I'm not even using AudioKit's low pass filter. I'm using the low pass filter that's right here. I'm using the envelope that's right here. One step, if you are looking at taking this approach, you can't increase the value of the attack or release. You can only decrease it. So if you're creating an instrument that you're going to use, then max out the attack, max out the release, and then come up here and envelope 1. I might make the attack. Let's see here, attack. I'm going to set it all the way down. Okay. So what that did, that's a problem. Let's move it this way. Anyways, that's a tricky one. That's one. There are some gotchas with implementing this. I think at some point I'm going to make a video on in-depth use of just this sampler and getting it working with AV audio unit sampler. But anyways, the sand is literally dropping. So we're going to move on to the next part. So here we are inside of Xcode. What I'm going to do is first I'm going to clip on to our app delegate. And we want to set up our AV audio. Let's see, what is it called? AV audio session. Let's see, by the magic of using the little snippets, I'll put it right here. And you can see it's AV audio session. And we are setting up a shared instance. We're also setting what our buffer length is going to be. And we are setting it to playback. You'll notice that we're getting a bunch of errors. That's because we're trying to access code that's inside of both AudioKit and AV Foundation. But once again, by the power of snippets, we will import those two things. Now let's go into our actual project, our actual view that we're going to be seeing in the app. So I'll go ahead and I'll build this out. And let's import AudioKit. But let's not core AudioKit. That's something different. All right, let's import AudioKit. Let's also import one of the newer packages from AudioKit that's called Keyboard. And let's also import Tonic. That's not how we spell. Tonic is, Keyboard has a dependency on Tonic or vice versa. If you're going to use Keyboard, you have to have Tonic in there as well. But it doesn't know what AudioKit is yet because we haven't added that package. In the past, whenever you wanted to add AudioKit to your application, you would have used CocoaPods. I hate CocoaPods, okay? CocoaPods, no bueno. But now they have Swift Package Manager. So you can just go up to File, Packages, and actually you go here to File, Add Packages. But if you've added it previously, you can click this little stop sign and you can add AudioKit right here. We're using the branch, the main branch. Whenever you're in development, you might want to be using the main branch. But by the time you're ready to release, you might want to stick your app to a specific version. That way things aren't going to break in the future. Okay, so I've added in our package for AudioKit. And now we'll want to do the same thing for Keyboard. I'm just waiting for the... Let's try and build it, and there we go. There's my error coming up. We'll click it again. We're going to search. We have our keyboard. This is a keyboard. There's a little GIF there. That's cool. They can embed that to show you what was there. This keyboard package came out during the development of my app. It actually came out during the testing phase of my app. And it was a real lifesaver because Swift UI and UIKit don't play so well together. Swift UI, if you're using the gestures, actually do not support multi-touch. So you still have to use UI touch inside of your application if you want to have multi-touch. I remember during the development, found a problem with it where the touches weren't working right. I told Ari about it, and by the morning, Taylor had gone in and already like rewritten the entire touch code for the package. So that was awesome. Same thing with the knobs and everything. So even though we're using Swift UI, a lot of these elements that are built in, we're using UI touch stuff, UIKit things. All right, so let's do another magic trick using our snippets that I wrote earlier. And this is going to be our Apple sampler class. So I'll tell you exactly what's happening here. Opening up our view from our delegate, we're opening up this view that is our content view. But we want our content view to be managing data, and that data is going to be inside of this class that I've called sampler class. This sampler class is an observable object, so I'm going to be observing things that change if those values are published. All right, so the first thing that we set up is we're going to set up our audio engine instance, and this is our AudioKit audio engine, which would be similar to Apple's AV audio engine. We're also going to set up an instrument, which is our Apple sampler instrument. You know what you all are going to like? If I make it bigger. There we go. And also feel free to ask questions as we go. I can multitask. Then the next thing that we do is whenever we create this class where we have an init method that's called for us, I'm going to have our engine's output connected to the node, which is our instrument. Then I'm going to load our instrument. This load instrument method is very similar to the one that you would find in AV audio unit sampler. And then we're going to start the engine. The only difference is from what you would do with AV audio unit stuff is you're not attaching and detaching nodes. Instead, you're just managing the output of the engine by itself. Okay, and down here, we have our node on and node off method. Well, those methods are going to be speaking to our keyboard, which we will put down here in our view. Okay. Once again, by the magic of snippets, we have added to our view a pointer to our conductor. Get out of here, you. A pointer to our conductor, which is our state object of our class. And inside of this, the body, I have added a Swift UI keyboard. The Swift UI keyboard is pointing to the keyboard that comes from AudioKit's keyboard package. The reason that I am not just putting this keyboard directly in here in our view is because Swift UI has some fun features where if you embed a view inside of your Swift UI thing, anytime you update a state object with, say, like this conductor, it's also going to redraw the keyboard. Well, we don't want that. So instead, I've moved this into its own subclass view, whatever you call it. And now it's not going to update if I update things in my conductor. Okay, so that's a gotcha. That's one of those gotchas where I was playing my app close to release and I was like, why is it laggy? What's wrong with AudioKit's code? And Ari was like, what's wrong with your code, bro? And he was right. I did it wrong. But anyways, we're all learning together. We're all in this together. And that's the cool thing about this audio community, both AudioKit and not with AudioKit, is I really do feel like the mobile music space, it feels like everyone's in it, from the content creators to the people making apps. It's really cool. I didn't always have that when I was doing game development because it felt like it was just more about me. And that's my TED Talk about friendship. All right, so now, inside of the keyboard, we have our two methods that we are calling, and we are instantiating a cool word, a piano here, and we're setting our pitch range. You could set these pitch ranges dynamically, but right now I have them just hard-coded in. And we do have two methods that we're calling, node on and node off, and our keyboard is going to be sending a pitch. So back up in our class, I am calling those to our instrument, our keyboard instrument. I want to play the MIDI note number of the pitch's int value whenever it comes in. And I'm not using this point for CG stuff, but that's something you could use if you wanted your keyboard to have velocity sensing. So if you touch near the bottom of the key, maybe you want to send that value to your velocity, you know. And that certainly is a good way to be more expressive with what you have. Separately, if I wanted to, I'm actually not showing off MIDI support today, but if I, let's get there. If I came up here and I added MIDI listener, then it should give me, it should complain to me. And then I'm going to say, okay, give me all the stubs. It gives me all these different methods. You could put your instrument playing method right here and MIDI note on, and suddenly it's going to work. Like you plug in your MIDI controller. If you set up that listener, it gives you these methods. It's super cool. And there are things with app development that are always going to be difficult. And then there are things that are just awesome whenever it just works. The MIDI implementation just works. I do know that they're working on MIDI kit with AudioKit right now. So it is likely to change in the future. That's another thing with AudioKit is it is evolving. So that's another reason that you want to get kind of pinned down to a version once you release your app and kind of let it live there for a little while until you upgrade to the new versions. But you know what? I think this might actually work. So let's try coming over here. We want to select our device. Something that I am not covering right now is how to get things installed on your device. Getting the certificates and the provisioning profile stuff working, that is a whole different separate talk that I'm not really going over. Once you figure that stuff out one time, then you're kind of set, but it can be a pain initially. Just know that we've all been through it, and you will get through it as well. All right, so it should be building our app now. I'm not building to a device, but let's see if it's playing here. All right, it is playing. That's actually a Mac OS build that we did for it. So that's cool. Something I didn't want to show you or didn't intend to show. It actually is working on Mac OS, but now let's see it building directly to our device. There, it's shown up. That's our Yuki app. There is a way to share this screen, but we're going to do it. We're going to be a little janky with it. Okay, so there you see, we have our keyboard. Can you hear this in the mic okay?
We can, yes.
Okay. I'm not a Alamir, so I'm not the type of like touch, performer, but you can hear the sounds are there. All right, let's see if I can give it somewhat of a proper demo of it. Here we get some sound there. Not janky at all. Anyways, it's working. And that's pretty cool. We got it working with very few lines of code. And in the little series on YouTube I've been trying to make apps in less than 100 lines of code. Well, this is a working sampler in 35 lines of code. So that's pretty awesome. But let's say you're not so sure about AudioKit because you're afraid, it might get deprecated one day. One day, maybe what's going to happen is Ari's going to decide, I'm not updating AudioKit anymore. I'm just going to go mountain biking because I think he likes biking, and mountain biking all the time sounds pretty cool. So in that case, I just want to show real quick what could happen if we replace that tiny layer of AudioKit. So by the power of our snippet, once again, I am going to change over our code to now using AV Audio Engine and using AV Audio Unit Sampler. To do this, we need to import our AV Foundation. Sorry, Ari. I'm sorry, Ari. I'm done with AudioKit. It was fun while it lasted. But so now we're removing AudioKit. But the cool thing about AudioKit now is it's no longer just the engine that it was before. What's happened is, what are we doing wrong here? We don't have a MIDI note number. Oh, we should still have that. Oh, maybe we still need AudioKit. We do still need AudioKit. Just for this part. There's a way that you can rewrite these. Let's see if I can just send force in without using our MIDI note number. We'll try that out, see if it works for us. Haha. That's all you have to do is you just have to click stop signs, and then the stop signs fix your problems for you. All right, so now we can safely remove AudioKit. The cool thing with AudioKit now is it's not just a framework where everything is built into it. I am now going to be using AV Audio Unit Sampler, but I am using the keyboard and tonic from AudioKit. So you can use separate parts. I imagine even if you're using something like Juice, if you have a Swift layer, you could actually be using AudioKit's knobs. You could use the visualizers. You could use any other part of AudioKit. So you can really plug and play these things as you want. So let's go ahead and hit stop. We'll hit play again. The only thing that's anticlimactic about this is it sounds exactly the same. But now we're using the AudioKit keyboard, but we're using AV Audio Unit Sampler's implementation. So you can feel safe using this framework. I feel safe using this framework because I know that it is built so close to what Apple already has in place. And really, a lot of the magic that's happening here is how robust this AV Audio Unit Sampler is. So why use AudioKit? Why should we use AudioKit if we can just bypass it entirely like I did? Well, let's go back to adding the AudioKit one like we had before. There's our AudioKit one. We'll add AudioKit back in. One of the things that I think that's so great about it, aside from just, it's just awesome, is how easy it is to start adding effects and different things from different packages. So say we want to add reverb. Well, I can just add reverb to our output right here. I might want to turn this into a knob. I might want to expose, a dry wet mix that's inside of there. But now I'll just hit play. This reverb is actually a reverb that is built in with Apple's code too, but you don't use it this way. It's not this easy to just have it working. And you have reverb. You could tap that into, if I click on this and jump to definition, that's a way you can find out what all this code is pointing to. Is you double click on it, jump to definition. Now I can look at the reverb and I can see what different values I have access to and what they do. And ultimately I can see that where is this pulling from? Well, it's pulling from AV Audio Unit reverb. Okay, so that's using one of, but say you want to use something else. Say you want to use like some pitch shifting. Well, that's going to live, a lot of the more advanced features like that are going to, let me see how much sand I have left. All right, we're good, but I got to go fast. This one is going to be inside of SoundPipe, AudioKit SoundPipe, or rather SoundPipe AudioKit. So now once it starts complaining here in a second, I can click this and I'll import SoundPipe. And I'm going to try and pitch shift the sound that we have. You know what I'm going to do? They're JHS pedals. I love guitar pedals. My app that I'm making is about running synthesizers through overdrive pedals. Well, JHS just released a new pedal that's called an octave reverb. So it leaves this main sound unaffected, but it adds like an octave above for your reverb. We're going to try and make something like that real fast. Okay, so we want our sound to be unaffected. So what I'm going to do to our output, I'm going to have a mixer and I'm going to send it our instrument. And I'm also going to send it this reverb that's all the way up. That's, I'm missing a closing bracket, aren't I? But there's something built into AudioKit SoundPipe that's called pitch shift. Let's see, it should tell me what it's pitch shifter. Okay, so I'm going to open that up with open brackets and I need to tell it what to shift to. So I'm going to shift it to, actually, let's see what the methods are in there. So I'm going to jump to the definition. I see that we have something that we can call for window size and something for our crossfade and something for our pitch shift. Okay, so we're using semitones. So we're going to go up 12 to go up an octave. And our window size, the lower you keep your window, the faster that the buffer will be. But if you fill up a buffer too quickly, sometimes it hasn't given the sound time to breathe yet. You're going to have some crackling and popping. So I'm actually going to go all the way up to this 10,000 value for our window size. Let's go back. All right, so our shift, we're going to go up 12. And our window size, I'm going to have that be 10,000. Did you know when you write numbers, you can do an underscore there and it'll read that as 10,000 as well? I didn't know that until recently. So let's try and run it. And hopefully that looks right, like it's going to play the sound, but our reverb is just going to be an octave above. Hello. Hello. All right, there we go. So it's building to our device. Let's try playing. So that's pretty awesome, right? So you just with a few lines of code, we've been able to add these things. Now, typically what you might want to do is you might want to, let's say, what's my next step? Where do you go from here? Well, inside of my app, I had imported controls, which is another AudioKit package. And with the controls, you can then map them to all these different effects you have. So then you can, not to totally just like chill my own app, but that's what these are. These knobs up here, they're based on the AudioKit controls. We actually worked on getting these done, and the work that went into these is what is in AudioKit's code. So it really has been a cool circular journey. Also, Ari and Taylor made these little sliders on the side. This really does showcase a lot of the new features that came up in AudioKit. So if it's broken, be sure to write Ari about anything that's broken, but just say good things to me. What is the other next step is to have this working with AUV3. Right now, people expect applications to have AUV3 support on mobile, and that can be difficult. I made a package for it. There's also an AUV3 example for AudioKit 4, but hopefully that's something that's going to come in the future, is something where, I don't know if I added the controls or not. Let's see, did I add it already? I may have added controls twice. Anyways, yeah, AUV3 support is so that you can use your application inside of an AUV3 host application like GarageBand, Cubasis, AUM, or whatever else. And that's really what was different about audio app development this time, and what brought me back to it is that audio apps on mobile are no longer toys. They are now a robust toolkit that if you get them in a musician's hands, they can actually use that for instruments to go on and record professional sounding things on a mobile device. And it's still early. It's only going to be growing. So I've chosen AudioKit. I've chosen Apple Sampler. That's where I'm putting my flag in the ground. And once you have a working sampler, really your possibility for making apps is endless. You can make a sequencer, you can make a ukulele app. Yeah, I think that's the last thing I'll try and do is let's just see if I can add a knob here for one of those things. So let's do I'll type in small knob. There's a small knob example where I can have our values and range. Maybe the value that I'm doing this in the wrong one. Let's come down here. We're going to add our small knob, and we want to change. Our reverb that we did. Let's come in here. We're going to make this a reverb variable now, as opposed to having it just be something that we put on there as a let, and then we're never touching again. So I have our reverb, and our reverb will equal all this jazz. There we go. And then now I can just pass it the reverb, as opposed to passing it what I was passing before. So now, since I have this variable, I'm going to publish this. It's going to be a published variable. Ooh, that looks right, but I don't think it is right. I think it has to be, yes, at published. Now down here, I'm going to have the value be conductor dot reverb dot dry wet mix. I'm going totally off script now. So if this doesn't work, then that's because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Let's see if it works. That's the fun of it, right? This is the fun part. If you can't do this part, then the rest of it, I don't know. I think it's fun. All right, so we have our reverb. That should build, believe. Oh, we're missing an argument. Oh, no. Okay. Instead of instantiating our reverb right here, we just want to say we're going to have some reverb. Reverb coming up, and we'll put it in our init method. All right, let's see. And there's our not so small knob up there on the top, but now let's see if we can turn that down. You can see that it changed the wet dry mix in there. Hopefully you can hear that through the microphone. So that's AudioKit. That's how to get started with it. If you want to learn more about it, then just check out AudioKit's GitHub packages. Check out the cookbook. Just play around with it. That's how I really went up this learning curve, and it's been a wonderful journey about learning about synthesis and making music apps with AudioKit at the same time. Because I do think it has the discoverability there, whereas it's hard to find that just with Apple's code alone. Yeah, open for questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nick, aka Moby Pixel. And that's awesome. Great. So we have a couple questions here. First question is, will you have any AUV3 walkthrough videos with AudioKit coming in the future?
Yeah, so I actually already have one AUV3 video for instrument that's up there. And let's see, are you still seeing me? I think I stopped screen sharing.
I stopped you, but if
okay,
you
awesome.
Share again, please do so.
Okay, yeah, no worries. So yeah, I made a video on using AUV3 for an instrument, and I'm still learning with the stuff. I thought whenever I first created that video and the example, I used it in GarageBand. It worked perfectly. It was working in GarageBand. Then I downloaded AUM, and I was like, I was rendering the audio in the wrong place. So I had to adjust that, and I was like, okay. One of the reasons I had to re-render the audio is because in Apple Sampler, which is that layer on top of AV audio unit sampler, if you sneeze on that sampler, you drop the samples. So anytime you plug in the headphones, there's a chance that it's going to drop the audio connection. If you get a phone call, it's going to drop the audio connection to those audio files, and you have to restart that. You have to reset up your sampler anytime those things happen. And because of that, I had to be very careful in the places where I was sending data or setting up the instrument inside of the AUV3 extension. Then I tried Cubasis. It wasn't working in Cubasis. So I fixed it up in Cubasis. So now that I am launching my app tomorrow, I think what's going to happen is as it gets in the hands of mobile music users, they're going to find areas that were blind spots to me and my testers. And whatever they end up finding, or any solutions I have, those are going to get rolled into that GitHub project. And hopefully those will get rolled into a proper AudioKit example at some point using AudioKit 5. But as for right now, if you look on my GitHub page, you will see the AUV3 example for the instrument using this AV audio unit sampler, the Apple sampler. And I also have a YouTube video about it, just talking about how to do that. It is a different process if you are trying to use I think there are 3 types of AUV3s right now. There's like ones that use MIDI, there's ones that you can have as an instrument, and there's ones that you can do as an audio effect. I'd love to do the audio effect ones. I think it's just a matter of me actually going up those learning curve and then turning around and making working examples.
Fantastic. So Wave Morpher asks, what if you wanted an XY pad? How much more difficult would it be to implement something like that?
Yeah, so in the keyboard, it's either in keyboard and controls. Actually, it's in controls. There is an XY pad in there. And you can use that. I mean, basically, you would take that map value and it's probably a binding value to a float. So you just have that binding value update, and you could have it be your float variable, and then in a did set method within that float, you could be doing any kind of computation. Or if you're using something like AudioKit's reverb or AudioKit's delay, those things, the parameters that are inside of them will update that stuff for you automatically. So once you're binding to something like I did with the dry wet mix, I don't really have to handle anything in like a did set method.
Okay. Ale London asks, what combination of device model and OS gets the lowest maintenance latency, and how many milliseconds? That would probably be a difficult question. Do you happen to know?
I mean, now that M1 is out, any M1 devices are going to be faster. I have just like an iPhone 12 Pro that I was testing on, and the latency is very low. It also has to do with how quickly you can fill the buffer. And fortunately, now we're at a point where you can lower that buffer size as these have gotten faster, and it can play back without those glitches. Previously, like if you're building something for an older device, this one is like the iPad Air 2, then you do need to raise that buffer to something like 1024. Whereas the default for my application right now is 254, which is also the default inside of AUM and the default inside of Cubasis. So I figured if that's fast enough for them, then it's fast enough for me. In terms of the milliseconds of delay, because the keyboard isn't using Swift UI directly, I think people have said with Swift UI, it's not super fast and it's not really for real-time stuff. I'm not sure if, since they switched to using UI touch stuff, if that's actually faster than the gestures. But whenever I lower the buffer speed and I'm just playing on the keyboard, there is not a noticeable latency for me. Now, I'm not playing like 200 BPM, like 16th notes really fast or anything. I'm not. But in terms of just like playing a keyboard and it interrupting my flow of actually trying to play, it feels like I'm actually playing it once I've set that buffer speed.
Great. Wave Morpher asks if you could explain published and state object. Swift have a lot of these things like observable object. I find it hard to understand the Swift model of shareable state.
Yes. Okay. So rewind to the beginning of the year before I started doing the AudioKit stuff. I didn't know Swift UI. I was hesitant whenever I started out in Objective-C. So whenever Swift came out, I was like, I don't want to do that. And then by the time Swift UI came out, I was really like, nope, I do not want to learn another language on this same platform. No, thank you. But working through the AudioKit examples, I was surprised that I actually did enjoy learning Swift UI and the way things work. Yes, with having the published values. So let's, I can jump back into the code real quick. Let's share that. Okay, so down here, and you will see this in the cookbook. If you use the cookbook and download the stuff, you'll see sometimes smaller examples and certainly better documented examples than what I have here. But right here, my conductor is this state object, And whatever this class is that is pointing to is going to be an observable object. Now, by default, it is not observing what any of these values are doing. So if I were to come off here and let's take app published off and see what happens. And another thing I wanted to show that I didn't do is inside the keyboard, you can actually do a lot of different layouts. It's not just this one keyboard layout. There's a scaled layout. But one of the ones that we worked on is called guitar. And Ari said this looks like his guitar. It's got the Roger Linstrument type layout, the all fours, and pretty cool that you get that for free just by changing that one little line of code. And it's totally, extensible, so you can add your own views to it or whatever you want. So down here you have the all fours layout. But now that I turned off that app published, whenever I'm moving this, it's not updating. It's updating what the control is doing, but it's not updating it on the screen. I don't know if you can hear that, it's adding the reverb. So that is what is happening by making this a published variable. And you might not want to have your entire reverb be published. Maybe I just want that part of the reverb to be published. Well, in that case, I could have a variable, an app published variable that I'm going to call dry wet. Okay. And by default, let's set this to what we have our dry wet mix set to. And I want to extend it and say did set. Now, whenever we set this, I want to change our reverbs dry wet mix to what we just changed our dry wet to. Now, there we go. And now down here, instead of our reverb, let's see, instead of changing the reverb, I want to change dry wet, that variable I just set up. Now, because I am going to be updating this published value of dry wet, I can set this reverbs dry wet mix without having to publish every single thing that's happening in the reverb. Are we building? We're not building. Binding. Oh no. Okay, so what is it complaining about? Because it is.
Taylor says, gotta make dry wet a float.
Okay, and to do that, I go boop, and I just say, hey, hello. Or you might even be able to do like add a .0. I think sometimes that turns into doubles. I wish that they would, convert a double to float for me and not complain about it, but that doesn't always happen. Okay, so now you can see it's.
Yep.
So there we go. We're adding it without me having to update everything that's happening inside of this reverb class. We're keeping it very small. And I only put the app publish things that are here in my observable object. The other option is that I don't even know if this is going to work, but it's, for example, go with me. I could have it down here, and instead of it being a publish variable, this is now going to be state. Let's see if that works. It's probably not going to work. Taylor might be yelling at me now. Oh, hang on a tick. Maybe the kids got it after all. So now I'm not even using the other class at all for what I'm changing. It's just something that's directly on my view, and I'm accessing its state. Oh, it didn't work. What did I do wrong?
It wouldn't be live coding if it all worked.
I was almost cool for a second. I almost didn't mess up. I'm glad I messed up on at least one thing. So yeah, if you put that up here, in our app publish. That's what I think I did in my application. At first, I had just the best way to see these examples and see a good implementation of them is to look at the cookbook. A lot of times they will have like a data model where they're just publishing everything in that data model. So you'll have like the amplitude, the pitch, all these different things. And then you're publishing just that version. Not describing it exactly right, but I found that you don't have to piece it out. You don't have to have like 100 different app publish things. You can have it all built into its own struct. And that struct is like your data model.
Cool. Jean Rene asks why you preferred AudioKit to working with Juice, or did he misunderstand?
Yeah, so I didn't go deep enough into Juice to really know. I would love to go more into Juice. I mean, like, I think it would be a cool video idea to have a project of showing how to make something with Juice and AudioKit side by side, like using AudioKit for the keyboards and knobs like I just did, but having Juice be the audio engine, just to show sort of how you might implement something like that. What I like about the value proposition I like about Juice is that it works everywhere, right? The thing is I come from an iOS background where I've spent a lot of time on UIKit and just in Apple's ecosystem of using Xcode. So when I could just use something that kept me in Xcode, I didn't need to open up Terminal or try any other application. I felt right at home with doing it, even though a lot of this stuff was the Swift UI. And I still have some headaches with Swift UI, like getting Swift UI working in AUV3, an AUV3 app. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I think I'm going to have to figure that out real quick because the AUV3 side of my app doesn't look nearly as attractive as the in-app stuff that's using Swift UI. But yeah, I think that's just where I chose to go up this hill. I think if I used Juice, I would love Juice. I think if I used anything and invested time in it, I would love it. But I come from sort of the background of doing Objective-C first, and then the apps that I had, I wanted to port over to Android. So I learned Java for that. Then I got into game development. So I started doing C# and Unity, and now coming back to doing Swift UI. So really the platform is just a means to an end. The end is that I want to create a product. And I feel like AudioKit has helped make a productive workflow for me, that now with a single line of code. And I do make this stuff look easier than it actually is. Like there's a lot of hours of head scratching that went into this, but whenever it comes to getting the thing to do the thing, you don't have to do a lot. There's not a lot of overhead there. And then once you look at AudioKit's code, and I right click this Apple sampler, I jump in here to Apple sampler and I see that, okay, what is happening here? What are these different methods? I see, okay, it's using this sampler unit. Let me right click on that. Okay, so this is a load instrument. I'm going to jump to the definition. We are just one layer away from now I'm inside of AVF Foundation AV Audio Unit Sampler. So yeah, that's as close to the metal, if you will, that you can get. Not actually, that's a bad word to use because Apple actually has metal. I don't mean that metal, but this is as close to their piece of the source code that I can get to. Mm-hmm. What happens beneath this layer? I don't know. Nobody knows because Apple is a closed source company. So that's one of the challenges that happens with AudioKit and creating apps with AudioKit or anything is we don't know how Apple is using these pieces of AV Audio Unit Sampler. But as people like me create apps and put them out there and we learn more about it from reading bug reports that come in or experimenting and then putting that stuff back into AudioKit, that's just going to make apps better for anyone that's using this stuff in the future. And admittedly, the corner of AudioKit I'm working on, it's just this Apple sampler. So that's just a very small piece of the puzzle. They also have inside of SoundPipe, they have all kinds of DSP stuff. So if you are a glutton for punishment, that's where you can go look at that DSP. And also they have, there's a second sampler called Done Sampler. So if you don't even want to use this sampler, and I know with AudioKit Pro, a lot of their apps they're using now, they're using Done Sampler, which is built on top of like C++ from the ground up. The reason I choose to use Apple Sampler is stupid. I'm stupid. No, I don't. I think just because it's what Apple has, it's what was integrated with Logic, and there was a good example of it whenever I first started using AudioKit. But I really think either one of those could be a good option to go with. They both probably have their own headaches. The Done sampler, the other one that they use in AudioKit, it has to do with using SFZ files. So if you're using EXS instruments, then I would say use Apple Sampler. I think it's a little more robust, but it has some bugs that are inside of Apple's code that they are likely never to fix. But if you can work with the bugs, then you can create something really special, I think.
Amazing. So the next question is from Wave Morpher. How do you access the raw buffer values of the sampler?
Yeah, so that's what was the things that I did right in the very beginning, where I was setting up this AV audio unit shared instance preferred in-out buffer duration. So I'm pulling in a buffer length here that is medium, and that is a constant that I think jumps to the value of 8. I don't know if it's, yeah. So because of some multiplication stuff that's happening here, the value that I am using by default right now is 256. Really what you would want to do is download the app on various devices and test it out. I think let me think. I was actually looking at AudioKit Pro's apps to see what they started with in their applications and in my application. I have the ability for users to go in and change these at runtime. And I basically save that to a preset. So anytime they use the application, I will jump to that. If you're doing something where you want to render the microphone really quickly and you want to have low latency, I think you choose either short or very short for that buffer speed. But obviously, as you have more robust DSP, if you're doing, your reverbs and pitch shifting, then you're going to start to have some popping that's going on there. I've probably already updated them, but let me just check very quickly. Oh, well, what you could do is if you download AudioKit's VHS synth or AudioKit's the Synth 1, you'll see what their default values are. I think because Synth 1 is using actual synthesized oscillators, its buffer size is a little bit larger. It might be something like 1024. And then I think their newest one, VHS Synth, is long. So it's 512. But for whatever reason, and you do notice a little bit of a lag because of that. The higher your buffer speed, or not buffer speed, the higher your buffer length, the more latency you're going to notice from the time that you touch the screen to whenever you hear the sound. So lower buffer, faster latency, but you just want to check on the device. I don't know if AV audio unit sampler is optimized to run well on these buffers, and there is actually a different DSP kernel rendering thing that's happening with AudioKit versus using just Apple's code exclusively. So they might handle these differently. I've not worked extensively with using AV audio unit sampler outside of AudioKit, but my assumption is they would be pretty equally performant for both.
Okay. Pretty sure the answer to this is no, but I will ask it anyway. Monte Music Channel wants to know if there's any direct disc streaming in AudioKit.
Direct disc stream?
Yeah, so rather than needing to load the sounds into RAM, is there anything that streams directly from disk? So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the answer is no, and that if the answer is yes, that RA will correct us.
Yeah, Ari and Taylor, So I will say, like, Taylor, I think AudioKit has been a cast of evolving people over time. There have been, at one time, Matthew Fetcher was doing a lot of stuff on getting the source code up to Swift. But now his updates, mostly he's working on AudioKit Pro applications. And really, in the recent past, I feel like the people I've seen who are most active with doing pull requests and adding stuff to AudioKit. I mean, Ari, of course, any pull request goes through Ari's hands. And then on top of that, Taylor has been, he and Ari have been working on the controls, on the keyboard, basically all the new stuff that you see coming out of AudioKit. They are at the helm of creating that. And then other smaller pull requests, those are coming from Kim. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but MIDI Bud is the apps that he created. All the apps that he's been creating, he's been taking that source code and putting it back into AudioKit. I've been doing stuff with Apple Sampler as I've found things. Matt Pfeiffer. Yeah, there's really so many people. But thank you, Taylor. I feel like Taylor wrote a good chunk of my app without even knowing it because he's done the controls and keyboards and stuff. But in terms of the streaming, like the PCM stream or whatever it's called, I don't know. For questions like that, a good place to ask are Stack Overflow. Sometimes we jump on to Stack Overflow, but the quicker way is going to the Discord. There's a Discord for AudioKit, and there's also an AudioKit channel on the Audio Programmers Discord. So I live on those places. So if you ask, then I think somebody was asking about creating an AudioKit node the other day. I saw it on the Audio Programmers Discord, and so then I pinged Taylor, and he came, and he and Ari helped them out. So that's a good place to get that info.
So for people that may not be aware, direct disk streaming is for when you have huge sample libraries like contact libraries, for example. It's too much to load into RAM at once. So it's a way that you're able to actually stream the samples directly from disk rather than needing to load it into RAM. And RA says there was a direct disk streaming in AudioKit 4, but he took it out because the code had a lot of issues. So, and somebody had asked if Juice has that. Juice does not have that. But there is a sampler there's an open source sampler called Highs that's built with Juice, and that does have direct disk streaming, but it is a tricky problem, and that's why there are only a few multi-sample engines that are out there, like Contact, UVI Falcon, and a few others, and that's it. Cool. So that's really it. So thank you so much, Nick, aka Moby Pixel, and he has a lot of really cool videos. So make sure you check out his YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/Moby Pixel, MOBYPIXL, and I linked it up in the chat earlier in the discussion. Thanks so much. That was very educational.
Thank you.
And with that, that's about it. So just a few really quick announcements. So once again, thank you to our sponsors, Focusrite and Sonux, for sponsoring the audio programming meetup. Our next meetup is on the 8th of November. So it's every second Tuesday of the month. And also another thing, before I mention that other thing, I wanted to say, make sure you join our Discord. So we have discussions about C++, discussions about AudioKit, discussions about Max MSP. It's a great place if you're looking to connect with other people that are into audio programming and really into just learning and helping each other. It's a great place to go. You can join us on the audioprogrammer.com/community. And then we also have the wiki. Once again, if you're looking to share knowledge, tips, and or looking to digest some, you can check us out on wiki.theaudioprogrammer.com. And also, hot off the press, I got a message as we were doing the meetup from Rachel Locke, who's normally our co-host for the show, and she actually has a new episode of DSP Corner where she teaches DSP fundamentals. So be on the lookout for that. That's coming out in the next couple days, and that's really it. Yeah. So thank you so much to everybody who tuned in. Thank you to the AudioKit team who's also active on the chat. Thank you, Prashant and Nick, for presenting. Awesome, awesome meetup. Any other remarks before we sign off from anybody?
No, I mean, thanks for having us. This was awesome. I've been going up this learning curve this year, and it's been so much fun to learn the stuff and then sort of pay it forward, showing other people what I'm learning. And yeah, it's just an awesome community. I don't know if people who have been in the audio space for a long time might be numb to it or something, but I just feel like, yeah, it's been a very inclusive space, and that's not how I necessarily felt with other development in the past. So you guys rock. That's it.
Awesome. And girls and non-binary
Yes.
members as well. Yeah. So we're inclusive in this community towards everybody who wants to get into audio programming. But yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. I need that wallpaper, by the way, Nick. That is really awesome wallpaper. I love
I
that.
made that. I'm a cheap person, so I make my own stuff. That's if the audio app stuff doesn't work out, then
Wallpaper.
yeah, that's it.
We all got to have a plan B. Great. Um, Thank you very much. And with that, I will go ahead and sign off. Thank you, everybody, and see you all on the Discord or on November 8th right here on YouTube. Speak soon and have a great day.